Kevin, I'm going to hand this one to you. And thinking specifically around partner motivation, right, and trying to incentivize growth. There's always a balance between your short-term sales goals, which arguably are a lot more important in the for a lot of the business, but then also longer-term partner loyalty and having partners that grow with you, that invest in you, and are not just transactional, right? So how do you balance that? There is obviously a need for short-term goals and achieving growth in the short term, and then how do you incentivize that longer-term partner loyalty?
Yeah, I mean it's a challenge no matter what way you look at it. However, I mean when you think about short-term incentives, you really are looking at the next quarter, the next for the year to try and motivate the partners to sell more, right? I mean that's the end of the day. You want to motivate either at an individual level via a spiff, which are hugely common, or you motivate at a company level via company level incentive. And now there's a few ways of obviously doing that, but some of the common ways are heading out for promotions with additional discounts, right? I mean that's a classic way to start pushing the numbers. You can, what we tend to do is sometimes at a product or solution level, we'll focus on that portfolio element and we'll motivate via spiff or a promotion, which is an additional discount. You can also motivate behavior at the same time. And so added to the promotion that we have, we kind of say, hey, register a deal and be eligible for the promotion. So now you push a behavior on top of a growth driver, right? So we like kind of combining those things purely to get adoption on deal registration because it really is a new practice for us, but we've been pretty successful at it so far. And these things for me happen every half year or every quarter. So the cycle is pretty quick, right? And so that's kind of a lot of short-term stuff. When it comes to the program and maybe the long-term aspects of it, we use tiered pricing, which is tied into our points-based system. So baking a pricing incentive, if you like, into the program allows partners to kind of say, you know what, if I can move to the next level, I will get additional discounts, off of my orders or whatnot as we move forward. So kind of a nice way to bake it in. I think, front-end discounts and tier discounts still have a place in the benefits program, if you like, right? They're not dead yet because I still think that, putting the carrot out there relative to a rebate or some other back-end incentive, I think is certainly a way to push the needle when it comes to motivating the partner community, right? So there's a lot of options here, and I think you got to certainly balance that back end or that long-term view with either a back end rebate or those upfront tiered incentives. I'm sure there are others that the panel would come up with. And then the other piece I would add relative to kind of long-term partner loyalty, if you have partners who are, knocking it out of the park in the program, then you start looking at from my perspective, looking at their capabilities. And so are they capable of taking on a new practice? Let's build out a co-delivery program with these partners where you're now not necessarily looking at let's get the number and let's get the discount for that additional number. You're now looking at their total profitability, quite frankly, right? And when you look at their profitability, you're kind of saying, hey, if we're going to do co-delivery programs, there's an investment on their side and there's a profitability opportunity on their side as well. And you start bringing them more into your company, if you like, not just true resellers per se, but more about service providers, et cetera. And I think that for me is an element that we have seen at Itron where partners have become even more loyal as we've adopted these services programs with them. And partners who have never been in that space probably 2 or 3 years ago, right? And we entered an enablement practice with them and got them moving forward. And it really has changed the dynamic from a loyalty perspective. So, and the final point I'd say from my point of view is, we do have a niche partner community, just over 250 partners, and therefore they are pretty loyal in general, right? And we've got some great partner NPS scores relative to each of the regions. But we get great feedback from these partners, and we know that as we're doing great things by listening to them, we are seeing that their profitability is improving, the revenue per partner is improving, and you start feeling good about it, right? I think Louise, you mentioned about they love being part of a community, and that's very much what you kind of look at when you move from short-term incentives into long-term kind of programmatic plays, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've seen a lot of vendors actually talk about the 3x, 4x, 5x opportunity that you can get on top of actually selling their products or their solutions. Laurent, anything to add to that?
I think that's similar to what Kevin said in terms of how we operate in terms of front end, where you can have your discount put up front or whatever spiff you want to drive in and then rebate program, right? That's standard. I think that what's important is what Louise was presenting earlier on is to say, be super clear as to where do you want your partner to help you across the customer life cycle. That will define exactly where the touch points they're going to have with your customers, right? And therefore, that's where you can provide the incentive on the topics that matter the most, right? So in our world, into the cloud, right, we've developed a commercial model whereby our partners are not only compensated through a commission based on what they sell, but also how they are managing the customer relationship. Because what's critical to us is the level of renewals that we're going to get at the end, right? So we are therefore making clear to partners that there are some activities we expect them to conduct with the customers. And I think that's super important to really be precise as to what exactly you expect the partners to do so you can have the right incentive and spiff and motivation for them to drive your business.
Great, thank you. Louise, anything to add? And I'll just ask her, we're getting close to time, so
yeah,
we're gonna have to move to the next bit.
And Laurent touched on something I was going to say. It's that you've got different levers and different ways to incentivize depending on where you are with the partner relationship and with the customer journey as well, right? So yeah, you've got the short term individual salespeople, you've got kind of medium term, business rebates, and then I was going to talk about renewals as well. So yeah, you've got that longer term, renewals is a really good example. That that longer term kind of the next step of the sales cycle, not just talking about kind of opportunity being closed and that's the end of it. How do you carry on? And then to Kevin's point again, I was gonna mention that becoming more than just resellers, actually being embedded and being integrated into each other's business as well, again, just takes that kind of that partnership journey onto the next level and just continues that length of mutual growth.
Yeah, and it goes to that point you made in the beginning, right, around that mutual value. And I think that those are the partnerships that ultimately bear the most fruit, is where it makes sense for both parties. I think, Brenda, if we bring up the next poll question, and then we'll move on to the automation element.
Yeah, so this time we're asking, what do you believe has the greatest impact on long-term partner loyalty? And if you could choose your top three, that would be great. So financial incentives like spiffs and rebates, enablement and support, ease of doing business, quality of account managers, or trust, fairness, and transparency. And while we give people a chance to vote, I have a great question in from Moses. And he says, since our company can barely spell partnering, how can I best set proper expectations to the C-suite that this takes time? Anyone have some advice for Moses?
Yeah, I'll go. I think in terms of building a program and building a channel, there are things that you can do quickly. There are some quick wins that you can have, but to your point, as you said, Moses, it does take time, right? This is not a let's do it in 6 weeks and then walk away and everything's done, we've launched a channel. So I think you need to identify what the ultimate goal is and then break that down into what can be achieved quickly to get C-suite buy-in. Because like I said, there are things that you can do relatively quickly, and then break it up into stages. Because as Margaret said at the beginning, building a channel, building a program, implementing a PRM, it's massive, right? It can be huge, and you don't try and achieve everything all at once. You do have to break it up, but if you can break it up into demonstrable results at various different stages, and and then you can demonstrate real world tangible changes as you go at each of the different stages, rather than try and achieve everything all at once, and and have to wait till the very end in order to actually see the fruits of your labor.